Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein. If you're new to the show, this is where we talk about all things home recording and how to get the best results from your home studio if you're a DIY producer. To our returning listeners, welcome back. So stoked to have you. Welcome, everyone. If you're listening on your podcast app, please know that this is also available on YouTube. If you're discovering us on YouTube, please know that this is also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so you can choose to listen or watch this wherever you want to. Now, one final thing before we get into the episode is that on these episodes in this show, we always tell you what we do in certain situations, the tools we use, the approaches we use. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're very different between Malcolm and I. But this just goes to show that it's a very subjective thing and it is what works for us. It doesn't mean it works exactly the same way for you. Every song is different, every situation is different. If you want to know how to actually implement the things we talk about here in your own projects, how to apply it to your own songs, please go to the selfrecordingband.com/call and apply for our coaching program, because in there we'll walk you through all the steps of the recording process. We give you feedback, we listen to your songs, and we help you get the best results with your music in your home studio. And it all starts with a free call. So go to the selfrecordingband.com/call and let's have a chat about your next project. All right, today's topic is about gear. We haven't done that in a while. We rarely talk about gear because usually that's not the bottleneck for most people. But today it is the topic, and that's because a few people have asked me recently if they should buy a good mic preamp to put in front of their interfaces inputs. And so, yeah, let's discuss if that is a good idea and or not. And as always, I'm doing this not alone, but with my co-host and friend, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hey, Benny, I'm great, man. Hey, dude, I've got something I can't believe we haven't talked about because they're actually being spotted out in the wild now. But the Evertune bass guitars, have you seen one?
Yes, I have seen one. Cool. And not in reality. I have seen them online, but I don't know if you can still not order them, right?
No, I think they've just kind of been getting like what's that called? Tested by some people out in the field. You know, they're giving them to select people to kind of see how they do. I think getting some research and stuff.
I've seen Sam Pura post about it and at the Panda Studios, and the moment I saw one, I was immediately, I need it.
yeah, I know. I'm like, I haven't recorded a band in forever because neither of us do that anymore, but we still need one. Totally. Also, I'm jealous because the guitar player in my band has an Evertune guitar, and I just want to be able to do what he does, which is just take the guitar out, you do need one.
Take the bass out of the case, go on stage, not tune, tell everyone that I don't have to tune, and then just play.
Tell everyone. That's the best part about owning an Evertune is telling people you don't have to tune.
Exactly. That's what he does every single time, and that's the main reason why I want one too, because I want to be able to talk to our other guitarists and then be like, hey, now I don't have to tune as well. You're the only one left now. Anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah, I want one so bad. I want to try it.
But you haven't? Have you seen one in reality yet, or touched?
No, just online as well. But I'm excited about it because bass intonation is the death of me.
Totally, so excited. Yeah, it's even better than the guitar. I mean, it's even to me. It's like I would, if I had to choose, I would probably buy the Evertune bass before I get an Evertune guitar. I
think I would too. I think most bands should consider getting one.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. I saw. I don't know where you've seen it, but Sam Pura who posted it, or that was the person where I saw it.
I did see that post. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see the Melodyne screenshot?
Yes. Yeah. It looks just like how I Melodyne my basses.
Yeah, but it wasn't Melodyne. It was the raw performance, and it put it into Melodyne to show that it looks like a tuned performance, but it was the raw performance because it's so
it's going to sound just as stable as what I do after a Melodyne, but without the weird little artifact that is caused from the Melodyne. It's just like such a win. The attack is going to be so much cleaner. Yeah, that's great.
So great. Can't wait to try one of these. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Anything else?
But we're not talking about bass guitars and Evertunes today, are we? We're talking about do mic preamps really matter?
Exactly. Do mic preamps matter? Do I need to get one? Let's discuss this. So I want to say that the mic pre is an essential part of the chain, of course. And there are differences in style and character features, overall quality. So it's not that it doesn't matter at all. So there is a difference. There's completely different designs and different, there is a difference. there's different reasons to use different preamps as well. They can be used to add a certain color or to get huge amounts of super clean noise-free gain. This is sometimes what you need. It can add a certain perception of size and depth if it's a really high-quality one. It can bring out details in the source material. However, while all this seems to be like super interesting and fun and pretty cool, the differences are subtle. So even when we talk about like size and depth and those types of things, it's probably more subtle than you think, and we have to consider a few things to determine whether or not it is worth investing in one. And before we do that, let us quickly explain what a mic preamp actually is, and let us also clarify that you listening now, you already have one built into your interface probably. And so we just need to clarify that, because a mic pre is just a device that amplifies what comes out of your microphone and turns it into a line signal. And the mic input on your interface is a mic preamp. So you already have one. The question is just, do you need a different one, an external one? And how do you like actually use it?
Yeah. The question of, should I rent a mic preamp for when we're recording our album? Like, people have questions for us when they're recording themselves, and they're going to send it to Benny or I for mixing, which is great. That's super awesome. And this is not a dumb question, but it is a misinformed question maybe, because if you're recording yourself, you do have a mic preamp. You already do. There's a mic preamp built into any recording interface you would buy today. And that is what allows you to record any mic you plug into that interface. So if you have an interface, you have a mic preamp. The question really that we're being asked when they say, do I need a mic preamp or do I need to rent a mic preamp, is should I rent a more expensive mic preamp? Because you already have one. The question is, do you need a really nice one that you see bolted into a wall at your local music store?
Yeah, exactly.
or that you recorded through once when you were at a fancy studio. Is that the thing that is making it professional? And ultimately, if I'm going to call you all out, everybody that asks this question, you're hoping we're going to say yes. You want the answer to your problems to be that box. Yes, you want that to be what makes it sound magical. But that is not the case. No. I had this hilarious realization. I was thinking about the band Wet Future, which I've brought up numerous times. If anybody that checked out our Mixes Unpacked, Volume 2, I think, I had Wet Future on there. And the singer, Sean, who Benny met when he was here in Canada, and saw them play at the festival I was playing at. He's a great singer, like one of my favorite singers. He's just an incredible vocalist.
Yes, yeah.
And it occurred to me that he could record through a cell phone mic on the other side of the room, and I could record through literally the best gear on the planet, in like the best room in the planet, and his would sound better.
Yeah.
You know, like you could throw a blanket over the phone and you'd get a more usable result out of him than me in the most ideal of situations, because I am not a great singer. So does the mic preamp really matter that you have an expensive one? In my opinion, it's like the most ridiculous no, but we're going to talk about what is nice about them and all of that as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just a small, tiny part of the entire chain. You got to know that everything that goes into your recording, like if you consider the whole thing, there is the performance more than anything, like the singer or the player or whatever. That's always the number one thing. Then there's the room that you're in. Then there is the actual instrument if it's not a singer. Then there is the microphone placement, like how and where you put the mic. Then there is the mic preamp, but then there's also the converters, and then there is all the processing you do after the fact and all the other things. And so it's just a tiny, actually one of the smallest puzzle pieces in the entire chain. The only thing even more sort of irrelevant would be the converters, in my opinion. But like other than that, it's like everything else is more important. However, I still have different great sounding mic pre's here, and I love to use them, and for certain reasons. And by the way, if you're not convinced that a mic preamp isn't magical, if you think it is, I'm right now talking into this mic, and it's plugged into a Neve 1073, arguably one of the best mic preamps ever made. Sounds freaking cool, but does it sound better than any other podcast in the world? No, just a normal, standard, clean podcast recording, nothing fancy. Nobody would have ever listened to the show and be like, I wonder what mic pre he's using. It's just a very, very fancy mic pre, but doesn't add anything magical to my voice here. So it's just an example. But however, you can get pretty cool sounding results out of this mic pre, depending on how you use it. And that's what we want to get into as well today. All right, so I think the first thing you need to know, or you need to ask yourself is, does my interface have line inputs? Because that is what you need if you want to connect an external mic pre. If you only have mic, most interfaces probably have, but if you only have mic inputs and DI inputs, like instrument inputs, then an external mic pre doesn't really work, because then you would put a mic pre into another mic pre, or a mic pre into an instrument high Z input. And so you need to make sure you have a line input, which means it bypasses the mic pre of your interface and goes directly into the converter. That's what you need, because you don't want to stack, in most cases at least, you don't want to stack two mic pre's. If you really want the quality of your nice preamp that you bought or rent, you want to be able to plug it straight into the converter and bypass the internal mic pre of your interface. So that's the question number one.
And that is a mistake that totally happens all the time. People go and rent a really fancy one, but then they end up running that fancy one through their inexpensive mic pre, and it's like, well, do you think that helps?
Yeah, exactly. And even if you have line inputs, make sure you also use it, because a lot of people do what you just said, Malcolm. They just take the XLR out of the mic pre, go into the XLR in of the interface, and there you have your two mic pre's together, right?
Yeah. So it's easy to get caught on that if you're not looking for it.
Exactly. So line input, first thing you need to make sure you have and use. All right. So that is also how you connect it. You go to the line input of your interface. Or if you have just a dedicated converter, like I have, like my interface is just a converter, and plugged into this converter are different mic pre's. So I never had the all-in-one. I had it in the beginning, but for a long time now, I don't have an all-in-one interface. I have the individual components, but together they create what is an interface, essentially. So if you just have a converter, you need mic pre's anyway. So if that is you, if you don't have a mic pre currently, you need one. But like most of you already have one. All right. Now, potential reasons for getting an external mic pre. I could think of, and maybe you can add more, Malcolm, I don't know. I could think of features, first and foremost. So a very logical and actually good reason to add a different mic pre is if you need a certain feature that you currently don't have. Could be a polarity switch, a pad, the ability to have an input and an output if you want to drive it. Could be an impedance switch or whatever, like a low cut, or I don't know. Most things can be done after the fact in the DAW, but maybe there's a really good reason for you to get a different mic pre just because of some feature that it adds. Not really the sonics, but just because it can do something that your current one can't. Yeah,
like this is a huge issue I have with one of the Focusrite Scarlett racks. It's their like 8-input one, I think. It doesn't have polarity switches, and like if you're recording a drum kit, you need to be able to flip the polarity on a couple channels. So that's a huge bummer.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can be solved in the DAW, but like it to me, it's worth having that feature.
I'd rather hear it going in,
Yeah, a pad is a hugely beneficial feature for a lot of sources as well, because, snare drums are really loud.
Yeah.
So being able to pad that, pretty helpful, right? Because otherwise it's a distorted, clipped signal. And you can get external pads, but they're kind of expensive, honestly. So you might as well just have preamps that have that feature. Now, all of those features that I can think of, that like pad, low cut is another thing, polarity, like features that are nice to have in a preamp. A lot of interfaces also have those too. So again, you could probably get those by upgrading your interface, not necessarily going for a Class A external preamp still.
Yeah, totally. I'm just saying that could be one of the reasons. And if I don't know your situation, but if really the features are the bottleneck, then that's a good reason to change the mic pre, because then you just need it, right? Another reason could be just the color, the sound of it, and there's different designs. So there's solid state preamps, Class A preamps like the Neve that I'm talking into right now, or there's two preamps. I got a very nice two preamp next to me that sounds different. There is just different designs that sound differently. I'd say that depends, like if that makes sense or not, depends on how extreme you're planning to go with that. Like if it's just for the subtle difference that the preamp itself gives you, I'm pretty sure there's probably other bottlenecks that you should solve first that are more important than that. However, if you're really intentional and you want a certain distortion characteristic, for example, from a certain piece or whatever, and you're really going to use it in extremer settings, it might be worth it, or at least fun. Not really necessary, but fun. So I just know that if I drive my tube mic pre that I have here, or my Neve, they sound different. I can almost use them like guitar amps. They distort really in a crazy way, a very cool sounding way. But it's nothing essential. It's fun, and if you want to use it in an extreme way, it's cool. But if I only got it for the subtle difference in what they sound like when I use them in a clean way, not worth the price for most people. So yeah, but the color is the second reason why people get, and this is the main reason why studios, like professional studios, commercial studios, have a selection of different mic pre's often, because they want different mic pre's for different sources, different colors. But that is because they have optimized everything about their recording rooms and chains, and so they are going for the absolute best quality. But those people would tell you as well that getting a good instrument first, practicing your playing, optimizing the room, and everything else should come first. I'm always having to say this. So yeah,
definitely. This brings up the catch-22 of what I just like earlier described of, a great vocalist being able to do a better job with any gear than I can with the best gear in a vocal situation. Is that if that band does ask me, well, should we rent a great vocal preamp for our vocal recording? I'm going to say, if you can afford it, yes.
Yeah.
Still, even though you can still get a great result with your built-in one, it will probably be better.
It will.
Better is better, and it might be 1%, and but that's 1% better, right? It will not be the thing that makes it a good or bad recording, but it can affect the quality, and I think it's worth considering if that quality is worth X amount of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so glad you brought up the renting thing. I haven't even thought of that, because most people, and the reason why I wanted to do this episode is that I just got asked by a couple of people whether or not they should invest in that. And they all asked me if they should buy one. But actually, for most people, it makes much more sense to just rent one when you need it, because you don't record for real all the time. There's only a few projects each year or every other year that you really, record for real or record an album or whatever. And maybe if that is you, unless you do it really every day or every week or whatever, it makes much more sense to just rent one, because you can rent them a lot of times before it costs you the amount it costs to own them. And then you have to maintain them, and depending on the design and whatnot. So yeah, glad you brought that up. Might not be available everywhere, or you might not have the option to rent one, but if you have, that is a great thing to consider, because it doesn't break the bank and it can make a difference.
Yeah, I really love the idea of bands renting gear as they need it, not only because of all the reasons you just mentioned, but also because it puts this little time constraint on them. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, we've rented it for a month. We got to get our vocals done. Right? And that is so helpful for bands.
Yeah, totally. And also, we can't redo things after the fact, because then we would have to rent this thing again. These kind of constraints are so handy. And like, honestly, when I used to still produce bands and go into the studio with them, that, like, I think a lot of the benefit for these bands was that they had rented a studio and my time, right? So they had this money on the line. They needed to get things done in a timely fashion. And obviously, Benny and I are huge proponents of people that want to self-record themselves. We think that is the future. We think people are doing it great right now, and that's what we want you to do as a listener to this podcast. But if there is something that is lost, it is that, and it is this too much time problem, where, well, there's no reason to not just spend unlimited time on the project. So we can just keep going, and there's no rush. So, we'll just record the vocals over the next 3 years and never release the song. Like, people get stuck in this. Some people myself included, need deadlines. And studio, when you rent a studio or you hire somebody, there's deadlines that come with that. And renting a preamp could just be like the cheapest way to also get what you need, but also give yourself a deadline. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Okay, so next reason for getting a preamp might be that you don't need color, you don't need more features, but you just need a high quality preamp that gives you enough of clean gain. And that might be because of a certain source that you record. So for example, if you record very quiet classical acoustic guitar and you need that to be like a very dynamic audiophile recording with very subtle, tiny details and everything, it might be worth investing in a high quality preamp, because this is a really quiet source. You have to crank the preamp a lot if you want to get a a useful signal out of it, and some preamps just are noisy. And so in these situations, the difference might not be the sound, but just the fact that you can get clean gain without adding to the noise floor. Or same could be said for voiceover or podcast recordings. In fact, all of that goes together with the next point on this list here. If you have a really bad interface preamp, so in the rare case that your built-in preamp is really not good, which mostly means noisy or distorting when you crank it a lot, and you need clean gain, that could be a good reason to get an external preamp. And I have a cheap 2-channel interface here in front of me that I don't use for the show right now. I use it for other things, but this used to be my podcast interface, and I eventually ended up using it. I'm not going to say which one it is, but I ended up not using it. I stopped using it because the preamps were just too noisy. Once you get past the halfway point of the gain, especially with an SM7 or a dynamic mic like that, it's almost unusable. And there's workarounds for that. You can have like a fat head or a cloud lifter in between your mic and the preamp to add a little bit of clean gain there. But still, this preamp honestly just wasn't good, especially for quiet spoken word things with a dynamic mic. And if I were to record an acoustic guitar with that in a classical recording or anything really subtle or quiet, that wouldn't be that much fun. So in that case, going for a simple, but high quality mic pre would be a good idea. And it doesn't have to be crazy expensive in that case. You don't need a lot of features. You don't need the drive. You just need a really good, solid preamp that can give you 70, 80 dBs of gain without adding crazy noise floor.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great point, actually. Like if all you have is like a dynamic mic and a cheap preamp, recording a quiet instrument is going to be pretty disappointing probably.
Yeah.
So like that's where, a decent condenser microphone that's more sensitive is going to really come in and save the day. And again, this is like a prioritize. How often do you need this? Can you rent it?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Now, things to consider. Your converters. What I mean by that is usually that is even less important than the preamp, but just in case you have really shitty converters for whatever reason, maybe you have some people, I've talked to people who still record on a late 90s something sound card or whatever, and maybe those converters really aren't good, and you should rather upgrade the interface in the converter before you plug in a better mic pre into that thing. But for most people, the converter isn't the bottleneck. But just make sure that you don't have a really crappy one, because even the expensive mic pre will go through that converter, and so you will always be limited by that if that is your problem. The more common bottleneck, though, or the more common thing that you should upgrade before the converter or the preamp is the actual mic. So I would rather upgrade the mic and get a better vocal mic than a better preamp, like any day. And only after I found my perfect vocal mic, I would even think about the preamp.
Absolutely, yeah. An SM58, great mic, but it sounds like an SM58 no matter what preamp you put it through.
Yeah.
And also whatever person holds it. Like SM58s are the most colored sounding things.
Yeah.
And that, if that's what you have, you can definitely make a record out of that. But yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement from there, especially, and finding the one that suits you and your vocal is like, that has meaning that will change the result of your album in ways that are way more important than anything a mic preamp could ever do.
Yeah, totally. The next thing to consider is the actual difference, meaning before you go and buy a preamp based on things you've read online or heard people say, or just go on YouTube, search for like mic pre comparison or shootout or whatever, and hear the actual difference for yourself. Like try to find something where that gives you an idea of how subtle the difference actually is, because there are, if it's a good one, it always depends on how people make these shootouts also. Some of them are pretty biased, but like if you find a good one and you close your eyes and listen to the examples, you're going to have a hard time picking out certain preamps, even though, and even if they are, even if one of them is like twice the money or a few, 5 times the price of a different one. So it is really subtle. And what you get essentially is, depending on the model, you get sometimes a slightly different frequency response, but most of them are just flat. That's what they designed to do. There's a few exceptions, but like most of them are flat. you get a slightly different transient response. You might get a certain perception of size or depth, but that's very subjective as well. Just go find one of those shootouts and figure out for yourself. It is probably more subtle than you think it is, and it can be. If you're excited to get a mic preamp now, this can maybe, I don't know, help you fight the urge to buy one once you hear how subtle it actually is. So yeah, because it is. It just is. Now, and again, I have some of these, so I'm not saying it doesn't do anything. There is a difference, and it's audible, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought these things. But there's other things to consider first. That's why I'm saying this. And then the most interesting question to me is always, are there other ways to achieve what you want? Because maybe there is a good reason for why you're not happy with what you're getting right now, and you want a different color, a different, characteristic, or something's missing. You compare yourself to other recordings, and you feel like, I can't get that size or whatever. But maybe you don't need the mic pre for like $1,000 or $2,000. Maybe $100 plugin does exactly what you want, and you can do it after the fact. So maybe there are other ways. If you just want grit or distortion, doesn't have to be the fancy mic pre. It's maybe a different kind of distortion, but there's so many great tools out there, so many cool colors available in your DAW that you might be able to find something really cool that is not your mic pre. Or, whatever you want. It depends on what you're hoping to get from it, but maybe there's a different way to achieve what you want.
Hopefully the takeaway from this is addressing the folks that, like I said earlier, are hoping that the mic pre is the answer to their problems. And it's just like, I want you to know that it's not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not. So don't look to gear to solve quality problems, ultimately, which is hilarious to say, because that's exactly why people buy gear.
Yeah, of course. And I've done that as well. And I still love buying gear. It's exciting, but it can be disappointing once you realize that your recordings still don't sound the way you want them to sound after you bought the thing. So, and we want to save you from that.
Do have this funny memory of like when I first started my internship at the Woodshop Recording Studios, which I've talked about on this podcast. Nice studio, fantastic gear there. And I knew the exact chain that this artist, Matt Corby, used for a live video that I saw him do. And I thought it sounded incredible. I borrowed that exact gear from the studio, brought it home to my place, and was like, this is going to be great. I'll do some live performance stuff. I didn't like how that sounded at all.
It's funny.
The difference was me.
Yeah, totally. Unfortunately, it hurts, but
it really hurt. But it was like such a valuable lesson. Yeah. And it was funny when I asked Zach if I could borrow the gear. He was like, "Okay, man. Yeah, of course. Go ahead." Like he knew.
Yeah, he knew for sure. Yeah, totally. I remember too with my the tube preamp that I was talking about. This is actually a 2-channel tube channel strip by Thermionic Culture. Fully tube design, British design, really fancy, amazing thing. 2 channels, cost about $3,000. It's amazing. It's got 2 preamps, an EQ, a distortion circuit. And when I got that thing, I have heard of people plugging it into the mix bus, like you can use a line into, not just as a preamp. And I've heard it on all kinds of sources of people that I really respect and like. So I tried it once, I was blown away, but because of the EQ mainly, but I just got it. I just wanted it, basically. I didn't need it, I wanted it. So I got it, and I remember getting into the studio, running, and I ran some mix through it, just the mix through the thing, and I expected it to add whatever magic, would happen when I run the mix through this thing. And I'm like, is it on? Or, it was like no difference at all the first time I ran through it. And then I tried, okay, maybe I need to go to extremer settings. And then I tried a few things. And I was like blown away how little of a difference these $3,000 just made that I just put on my mix, I love the thing and I use it for a couple of stuff. But it's not that it's like magic right away, even though I wanted it to be. Yeah. Anyway.
We always want it to be.
Yeah, of course. Now, also, one thing that I always tell people that I think is really important to understand is I think it's better to have one really great signal chain than to buy many sort of mediocre chains hoping you get more quality out of that. Meaning, let's say you have an 8-channel interface or 16 channels or whatever, standard interface, and you want to upgrade the quality. And now you could go and buy a different 8-channel preamp that is some supposedly like a little better. There are like hybrid designs with a tube in front of it that are not really tube amps, or there is like, preamps that claim to sound a lot better than what you have in interface, but actually they're pretty much using the same chips. There's a lot of things in the sort of low to medium price range that look like an improvement, but are actually not much different to the interface. And before you go out and buy a preamp like that and add and like swap out 8 of your channels for something like that, I would invest the money into one really good channel and one really good signal chain. So have one mic, one great preamp. Maybe, the interface probably has good enough converters, but like have one really great signal chain, a great DI. And then, for drums, either go to studio or use whatever you already have, because the improvement is not going to be that drastic if you just buy a different 8-channel pre, or go to studio, program it or whatever. But then you can record your guitars, your bass, your vocals, all that stuff through that excellent chain that you have. And that will be a much better way to invest your money compared to having that little bit of an upgrade, if at all, if there's any upgrade at all. If you like buy something cheaper on more channels, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for most people, they generally need one channel at a time. Drums are the obvious exception to that, but generally one's going to do it. So that system does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'd rather have less tools but better tools compared to all the channels in the world that are mediocre. I made that mistake as well, not with preamps, but with converters, for example, not with compressors, for example. I thought, like everyone does in the beginning, I thought analog gear is always better and outboard gear is cool, but I couldn't afford really good analog compressors, so I just bought cheap analog compressors, put them in a rack, and thought that is going to be super awesome. But instead of buying 6 channels of like cheap analog compression that maybe works for live sound but not really doesn't do anything for you in the studio, instead of doing that, I could have just bought one distressor, and that would have been a much better investment if I wanted to upgrade a compressor anyways. So, and with preamps it's the same. So maybe after your room has been treated, after you have the perfect instrument for you, after you have the right microphone for you, and you have an interface that works, and the DAW and everything else you need. After that, if you really need to upgrade something, get one really good preamp. If any of the stuff that I just mentioned isn't really good, upgrade that first. And then once you have one really great, excellent chain, then you can expand and buy more channels of that if you want to. But I think that's the order of things that I would approach this.
Yeah, typically that's pretty solid.
Cool. All right. Now, does that answer the question? Do I need an external mic pre? It depends, as always. For most people,
no.
For most people, no. And if you're really being intentional and you checked all the boxes that we mentioned, then yes.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else comes to mind, Malcolm? Anything you want to add to this?
The only thing I want to add is that if you're like, screw it, I'm buying one anyways. Those guys are wrong. Just remember that you're going to spend like another $150 in cables.
Oh, yeah.
And that really sucks too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Good TRS cables suck.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, that opens a whole other conversation, honestly. If you add more channels and you bring in a patch bay or something, and then that is cheap and craps out, and then there's like more trouble. Or if you're going with a 500 series system and you buy a bad rack with a bad power supply, and like
gear costs more.
Yeah, exactly. Do it right and make wise choices there, and maybe focus on other things.
I just thought of that because my first external preamp I got home and didn't have the cables to hook it up, and I was just like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Such a bummer. And then more money. Oh God.
Yeah, totally. All right. Really hope this was helpful. By the way, we have another episode on a similar topic, and I hope people don't confuse this. We have an episode where we talked about ADAT and how to expand your interface with more channels. That might be a great thing to listen to after this episode if you haven't already, because when we talk about an external mic pre, we don't mean anything digital. We don't mean a converter or anything you plug via ADAT into your interface. We just mean the mic pre itself, which is usually an analog device where you plug in the mic and then you go from on the back there is an XLR out or something and you go into a converter. That's what we've been talking about today.
But it could be an ADAT preamp.
It's
confusing.
It could. That's what I'm saying. What we're talking about today is not about the ADAT. It's about the preamp. But some of those have a digital interface built into them. So you could either grab the analog out or the digital out and go digitally into your interface. if that is the question, then if that is the case, then you'd have two components that you have to think about: the preamp and the built-in converter, and whether or not that is good or But like the really high-end stuff, though, typically doesn't have the converter in it. The real high-end stuff is just an analog preamp that you plug into your interface. And but if you want to learn more about that and how that actually works, there's an episode about expanding your interface with more channels and about what ADAT is and how to connect things like that. Just know that the most ADAT preamps fall into that category that I mentioned, where it's like cheaper gear that you only want to consider just for the reason of adding more channels, but not really for a quality upgrade in most cases. So that is perfectly fine. If you only have 8 channels but you need 16, by all means, go for that preamp. But if it's about pure quality and you have enough channels, it's about the preamp itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just go and listen to that episode. That's going to be less confusing than for you. 2 different things. Yeah. All right. That's it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.